Hey guys, Anton the Tech Chap, and this is the new Galaxy Fold 4. Well, you already knew that, it says in the title, but what you might not know is what it's actually been like to use. I've had this for a few weeks now, along with the Flip 4, which will be in a different review video, and I have some thoughts on this because it's not fundamentally different from the Fold 3. A little bit longer battery, slightly better camera, the taskbar, although you could get that before as well. But the question is this worth paying about 1,650 quid for? It is a lot of money. Okay, let me answer some of the big questions. And firstly, does it feel any different or more comfortable to use than the Fold 3? Well, a little bit. One of my issues with these folds is that when you're out and about, the cover screen can be a bit too small, well, narrow, and a bit finicky to use, but then the main 7.6-inch tablet screen can be too big, and it's really only comfortable two-handed. It lacks the just right Goldilocks size screen, which arguably is just a regular smartphone. Now the Fold 4 is better. The cover screen is noticeably wider and it is a little bit more comfortable to use, but it's not fundamentally different. And I still found typing or swiping a lot less accurate compared to my two-thumbed approach with the bigger keyboard on the tablet, which you can either have split into two for each thumb or a more typical full spread, if you will, which I actually prefer. There is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to phones, particularly foldables, and also the result of this remote control-esque cover screen is that we get this nice big, basically square tablet screen, which is lovely for websites, split-screen multitasking, gaming's really immersive, but you do get quite chunky black bars top and bottom for video and especially movies. Although holding it in landscape, most YouTube videos do use a good amount of the screen, and you can always zoom in to fill the screen, although it is quite a significant crop, so I don't really like doing that. But then flex mode in YouTube is quite cool, as you can have comments or other videos below it, or indeed just split screen with a whole different app. And if you close it, it'll keep playing on the cover screen, which is actually a very cool party trick, and also it kind of suits the cinematic aspect ratio better when you're watching movies. So, the bezels are a bit thinner, the hinge has been reduced and the mechanism feels a little bit more refined, the underscreen camera is now a bit better camouflaged, still not invisible, but they've increased the pixel density and changed the layout so it is noticeably less noticeable. The aspect ratios have been tweaked and most usefully that cover screen is a touch wider. It does still wobble if you use the phone flat on a desk, perhaps even a touch more so than last year as the camera bump is a little bit chunkier now. And although this is the thinnest and lightest Fold yet, it's only marginally better than the 3. It's still a bit of a chunky monkey. So on the whole, very welcome refinements, but nothing game-changing. And actually, I reckon a lot of people probably couldn't even tell the difference between the 3 and the 4.
Sorry James, what have you just done?
Well, I've been filming the wrong one.
Which one did you film?
The previous model. I couldn't even tell the difference. This is the new one, right? Blue's new, black one's old.
Okay, next question. Will it break? Well, firstly, credit to Samsung because the Folds and the Flips are the only foldables with water resistance, although not dust resistance. We get IPX8. I've also used the Fold 2, the 3, and now the 4 as my main daily everyday phone, and I've never had any issues. The aluminium frame will be the first thing to get dented if you do drop it, which I see my good friend Saf has already put to the test, but both screens now also use Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, which apparently is about 12% tougher than the Victus we had before. Now I actually haven't used a case so far, but I think while it would add to the bulk, it would also make it less slippery and also more comfortable to use, particularly when open in tablet mode. And I think the new redesigned standing case from Samsung is a good option because it's also a neat way of bringing the optional S Pen along with you. So the power button also doubles as a fingerprint sensor, which I think is a much better option here than an in-screen reader. We also get great stereo speakers, dual SIM, although no micro SD here sadly, and it's just a very smart and well-made bit of kit. Although I do kind of wish we had a few more interesting color options. Why does the Flip get to have all the fun? This is the new... Now a big thank you to Huel for sponsoring this video, and their ready-to-drink shakes have been a huge help for me recently, as while I do love to cook and also like to eat as healthily as possible, sometimes I just don't have time, so being able to grab a healthy and tasty shake has been amazing. All the flavors are great, although I'm pretty basic and think chocolate and the vanilla are the best. Then just drink it straight out of the bottle or put it over a couple of cubes in a glass, and it's a proper nutritionally complete meal with 26 vitamins and minerals. It's high in protein and low in sugar and salt, all natural ingredients. It's vegan, gluten-free. So for me, I'm having one of these ready to drink shakes for my lunch probably 2 to 3 times a week, and I'm really happy with it. Cheers! That's good. All right, back to work. It's easy to order online. You can select individual bottles or buy packs, and as long as they're in a cool, dry place, you don't have to keep them in the fridge, although a chilled Huel shake is a good Huel shake. So why not give Huel a try? It's an affordable, healthy alternative to a regular meal, and just click my link in the description below to get started, and best of all, you'll get a free t-shirt with your first order. Can't say fairer than that. All right, question 3, is it any faster? Well, the Fold 4 boasts the latest and greatest Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, and here are the results from the 20-minute 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme stress test, and to put that into context, here's the Fold 3's results with its Snapdragon 888. And while this is primarily a graphics test, we're looking at an average uptick of about 81%. That's huge. And so if you're a big gamer, or you're using this with more demanding apps, particularly if you've got 2 or 3 or even 4 running side by side, the performance jump on the Fold 4 is a big deal. For example, in Genshin Impact, maxed out of course, my average FPS jumped from 45 to an almost rock-solid 60. Both the cover and the tablet screens are still 120Hz, no change there, but they do now dynamically switch between 1 and 120 versus 10 and 120 on the Fold 3, which improves efficiency and therefore helps the battery. Which neatly brings me on to question 4, how's the battery life? Well, it's actually very good. We do get the same size 4400 mAh cell as before, but the more efficient screen and crucially a much more efficient chip adds up to give us a noticeably better battery than the Fold 3. After 3 hours of moderate to intensive use with some gaming, YouTube, 4K video recording, even TikTok and Instagram split screen for the ultimate doom scrolling experience. Seriously, this is next level time wasting. Anyway, 3 hours later, the Fold 3 has 47% of its battery left versus 58 on the Fold 4. And actually, over the last few weeks, I've been averaging around 6 to 6.5 hours of screen on time with the Fold 4. By 11 PM, I still have around 28% of my battery left, so a day and a half is easily doable, and actually it gives the S22 Ultra a run for its money. Now, charging is broadly the same as before, 25 watt wired, 15 watt wireless, and also 4.5 watt reverse charging. Plugged in, it still takes a hefty 1 hour 24 to fully charge, although an hour will get you to 75%, but this is still one area Samsung, like Apple, is still way behind on versus the competition. And of course, despite the price of this thing, there's still no charger in the box. Okay, let's talk about these cameras, because you have a lot of options. Firstly, there are 5 different lenses. 3 on the back, we have a 50 megapixel main, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and 10 megapixel telephoto. Then on the inside, we have this guy. It's the same 4 megapixel resolution as before, the under screen camera. And then finally at the front, you have your 12 megapixel cover camera. It's basically your selfie lens if you want, although if you're using it like this, that's also your selfie. But the beauty of this really is that you can be using these main cameras for pretty much everything, including selfies. So in the camera app, you can tap to turn on cover screen preview, and then we have our glorious, glamorous assistant James here videoing us. Your subject can see themselves as you take their photo, which is very handy. I know my wife loves this feature. I don't have to take 10,000 photos and be told that they're all wrong. And the other side of it is if we do go to a selfie, you can actually change it to selfie mode. So then you get the full camera app on the cover screen, and then you can use that, and we are still using the rear cameras. So even though the cameras may not be to quite the same quality as the S22 Ultra, including the zoom, that 30 times space zoom is a bit rubbish on here. The flexibility, versatility you get with this, it's more interesting, it's more fun. All right, look at this. Let's do a quick blind test. One of these is from the Fold 3, the other from the Fold 4. Both portrait mode shots, both with their background blur at level 3 in the camera app, no editing, no filters. What do you think? Well, I can tell you the Fold 4 is on the right, and there's not a huge difference, although to my eye it is a little bit sharper. The colors are more vibrant and also more true to life actually, and also I think the bokeh blur is a little bit more realistic with a less cardboard cutouty look that we get on the Fold 3. So the Fold 4's main camera has had a bump up in resolution from 12 to 50 megapixels, although that is now 4:1 pixel binned back down to 12, but that should add more detail and reduce noise. The main camera's field of view is also slightly wider than before, so you get a little bit more in the frame, but the headline really is the bigger pixel sensor size, 1.8 microns versus 1.4 last year. The ultra-wide and the telephoto have been tweaked as well, now with a 3x optical zoom versus 2x on the Fold 3. Plus we can now zoom in up to 30 times, which Samsung are still calling space zoom, although frankly anything beyond 10 times is pretty much unusable. So again, minor refinements, and actually in some cases I found myself preferring the Fold 3's photos. Considering this is basically the most expensive phone you can buy, the camera is still just not quite flagship level, which to me, again for that price, is a bit disappointing. Samsung have also improved the OIS and also what they're calling VDIS stabilization, which is basically just their EIS for video. And you know what? It does seem to make a difference. The Fold 4 is smoother, it's less grainy, video is noticeably better than the Fold 3. And also I did notice after about half an hour of 4K video recording, the Fold 4 was noticeably cooler to the touch than the Fold 3. Again, I think it's that Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 that's the real MVP here. So camera quality is of course very subjective, but if I were to give the iPhone 13 Pro and the S22 Ultra maybe a 9 out of 10 and the Pixel 6 Pro an 8 out of 10, then this would be a solid 7.5. What you can also do is use it in flex mode because it acts as its own stand. So you've got the under-screen camera here, and then you can take your video calls, your Zoom calls, and you can be hands-free, which is very helpful. You don't have to hold the phone in front of you. Or you can flip it around, use the higher quality rear cameras, and actually if you've got the S Pen, you can use the button on that as a remote shutter, which is quite helpful. So it's a pretty nifty feature, and I think for some people that is a big selling point. The Fold 4 is full of nifty features. The taskbar is a nice new addition. Well, I say new, you can actually get a slightly different version of it through the Samsung Labs on the Fold 3, but it's better implemented here. And thanks to Samsung's One UI 4.1.1 that I'm running on top of Android 12L, which actually is specifically for tablets, and in fact this is the first smartphone to use it, everything from the taskbar to multitasking to zooming in and flex mode stuff, it's the most refined it's ever been. And actually, if you do pick one of these up, go into the Advanced Features menu and then Labs and turn everything on, or at least play around with it. And then also customize split view and flex mode apps. All this can be a bit confusing as apps work differently in flex mode, and most actually don't do anything unless you force flex mode panel on, which brings up a little touchpad and a few quick settings, although I don't really know when I'd actually use this. What I do use a lot though is split screen. Swipe 2 fingers in from the side and select the app you'd like, or long press from the recent apps menu, and you can snap up to 3 apps side by side with a 4th hovering on top, and all these can be moved and resized, you can switch them around, and best of all you can favorite this setup and then save it to your home screen or the taskbar, so then just one tap brings you right back into the action. Because the Fold 4 is all about productivity, about giving you as many modes, options, and things to play with as possible. And with the S Pen, DeX support, link to Windows, maybe even a Bluetooth keyboard, and perhaps if you shell out for the 1 terabyte storage option, this could be a proper little desktop workstation. But having said that, most of this is already possible on the Fold 3, and sometimes it can still feel a bit clunky, and also most apps just aren't optimized to make use of it, which of course is always the problem with Android tablets. Okay, let's wrap this up. Should you buy the Galaxy Z Fold 4? And the answer is probably not. It is an incredible device with lots of potential, but it's also £1,650 or $1,800. And actually that's 50 quid more than last year. It's an awful lot of money. And while there is no doubt this is the multitasking / productivity king, it's just too expensive for most of us. The cover screen is still uncomfortably thin, and the camera, while better, still just isn't quite as good as I'd like. Another reviewer called this the Swiss Army knife of phones, which I think is pretty spot on. And actually, most of us don't need to carry a Swiss Army knife every day. And actually, I think if you can find a Fold 3 on a good deal, that might be worth getting, especially as that continues to receive updates and new features. So I love this thing, and for some people it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread, but personally, I wouldn't buy one. But how about you? Tempted? Already got one? Let me know in the comments below, and actually if you do have any tips or tricks, share them with everyone in the comments as well. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this review, then don't forget to hit that like and also subscribe button, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.